want to talk about the church of Thyatira and tolerating the woman Jezebel, which is what he had against them. It talks about Thyatira in Revelation 2:18 through the end of the chapter. And, talks about burnished bronze. Well, representing judgment, I believe. It talks about I'm searching the heart. Verse 20, it says, "But I have this against you, that you tolerate the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, and she teaches and leads my bondservants astray, so that they commit acts of immorality and eat things sacrificed to idols." Which you also see that eating things sacrificed to idols under the condemnation of the church of Pergamum, which is the one he addresses just before that. And they hold to the teaches the ways of Balaam. So, which is laid out in Numbers 22 through 25. You can read about Balaam, how he counseled Balak to put a stumbling block in front of Israel, which is a lot of what you see in today's culture of the 70s, free sex, free this, free that, 60s and 70s. You see that kind of culture emerge again. And basically leading people away. But I want to focus on Jezebel, because I think we live in a Jezebel culture. And you read about Jezebel in 1 Kings 21, verse 25 and 26, which you also see it in a couple of other places in 1 Kings. Basically, you start reading about Jezebel after Elijah does his thing with Mount Carmel. You start reading about Elijah fleeing from Jezebel in 1 Kings 19. And Elijah goes to Horeb, which is kind of interesting. It's Mount Horeb being Sinai, basically, or that area. And you can read about Jezebel's plots and all those things, but you read in 25 and 26, "Surely there was no one like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel his wife incited him." And you can read about how Jezebel perished in 1 Kings 21, verse 19, about how the dogs either attacked her or ate whatever. But you read in the beginning of chapter 21, where it talks about Ahab coveting Naboth's vineyard. Jezebel has, in verse 14, "Then they sent word to Jezebel, saying, Naboth has been stoned and is dead." So basically, the guy wouldn't give up his vineyard, but Jezebel was like, "I'm going to take that regardless." And that's what you see in this culture today, is a bunch of spoiled brats that don't want anything to you can't tell them anything about morality. You can't tell them anything about, you know, against homosexuality. You can't tell them anything against their outside of marriage and God and prayer and so many things that they've basically tried to throw out. And I believe that the Jezebel culture in America really started during the feminist movement of the 20s and 30s, or perhaps even earlier than that, and it's just progressed all the way through to where we are today. And why has this happened? Because we have become like Thyatira, and we tolerate the woman Jezebel, and we teach the ways of Balaam, which is what they're, the creating stumbling blocks for the people and committing immorality with sexual immorality with those people. There's a bigger concept to that, is that you have, well, Balak was trying to have Balaam curse the Israelites, and he couldn't do that. But Balaam said, well, if you create a stumbling block for them, God will turn against them. And that's in Numbers 22 through 25. Let's see if I can find it. And basically, their sin causes them to commit adultery. And the spiritual side of that is, are we committing adultery with other religions? Like that was the big thing about not eating meat sacrificed to idols, was not partaking in their sacrifices. Because like you read in Leviticus about the priest partaking of some of the sacrifices that the way God had outlined them. But you see you see that over and over and over in the New Testament especially, and the Old, I'm sure, but the New Testament about do not eat meat sacrificed to idols. Or that's one of the things, or do not eat strangled, and the things that they said first there in Acts 15 with the anticipation that they would be taught to rest later. That was only the starting point, it wasn't the end all. But you read about the sin of pure and the counsel of Balaam. He counsels, basically Balaam counsels Balak to send the women to entice Israel to sin, to basically commit adultery in a sense, to be unequally yoked, to however deep you want to go with that. And Pinhas, where he ran the people through, but you read about Balaam, and this is where you read about the talking donkey and this whole thing of Balaam. But he counsels them to basically encourage, to entice Israel to commit immorality. And that's what they're doing nowadays. They're enticing the churches to commit immorality. Not that you can't preach against homosexuality, you can't preach against this or that, or all these sorts of things, and they're doing the same thing. And the churches are making the same mistake as you read about in Numbers 22 through 20, and especially Numbers 25. It says, verse 1, while Israel remained in Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. And you see that play out. You can read it for yourself with the Moabites. But the point is that the church today is doing this exact same thing. And they were warned. And God searches the heart. And that, which is what it talks about with Thyatira, the one that searches the heart, and the burnished bronze has to do with judgment, the outer court of judgment, in my opinion. And you have the flaming sword, which is the word of God, that God uses against the people of Pergamum. He says, because he says, oh, the one with the two-edged sword, which is this, the Word of God, the Bible. So hopefully this made sense and is something to really think about when it comes to churches. Come out of her, my people, and be set apart, be separated. That's what was happening. He was taking the Israelites out of, and those willing, a mixed multitude, out of Egypt, out of the sea, out of the world, and he was setting them apart, putting them on the land, to later ultimately go to the promised land, to the Holy of Holies. And of course Jerusalem is part of that. They would always go up, which, go up to Jerusalem. Why? Because it's the throne of the great king. So shalom, shalom.